Hello, and welcome to the New Arab Book Club. I'm Elias Jahshan, and our guest today is Francesca Albanese, one of the most prominent voices on Palestine today. An international lawyer and scholar from Italy, since 2022, she has served as the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the occupied Palestinian territories. Francesca Albanese is not only the first woman to serve as the UN Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories, but she is also a published author. Her book, When the World Sleeps, Stories, Words and Wounds of Palestine, was first published in her mother tongue of Italian last year. Combining testimonials and essay and memoir writing, her book tells the story of Palestine through the lives, memories and wounds of Palestinians themselves. Just recently, When the World Sleeps was translated into English by Gregory Conti, and this is why we are honored to have Francesca as our special guest. So, without further ado, Francesca, welcome to the New Arab Book Club.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on. So we'll get straight into it. The title of your book, When the World Sleeps, suggests both indifference and a kind of moral unconsciousness. Are you able to elaborate more on why that title was chosen?
The title was chosen fortuitously because it was taken from a series of paintings that Malak Matar, who's both the author of the beautiful cover, and she's a painter from Gaza, and a character I write about in the book. She gave the title When the World Sleeps to her series, and I found it very inspiring because for what I wanted to depict, which is exactly what you said. It's on the one hand the indifference and the hypocrisy, and but also the fact that people do not really realize what's happening in Palestine. People do not necessarily know what Palestine is. Is it normal? Yes, it's normal because we are not supposed to know everything in the world. However, for us in Western countries, but for everyone everywhere, I would say, Palestine is a central issue because of the level of violence and the amount of crimes that have been committed that are really apocalyptic. And over 80 years, 100 years, over the past 3 years in particular, and because of the interconnectedness of these crimes and our states' complicity, different layers of complicity, political, military, ideological, economic, etc. So I discuss what Palestine, and I present Palestine through her legal features, because this is my ability, but also in a very human fashion, because it's through living and lived experience.
And you're best known to many readers as the UN rapporteur and a legal expert. But this book is not just a collection of essays, not just a collection of legal analysis. It's also built around stories from Palestinians themselves, from allies, and also deeply personal stories from you. Are you able to explain why you felt the need to move beyond legal reports and write something that's rather intimate?
I'd like to say that this book, if there is a need that prompted the writing of this book, is the fact that I wanted people to really understand, because the dehumanization of the Palestinians is what is allowing the indifference, the hypocrisy, and the continuation of the genocide, the denial of the genocide. But there is also a personal need. It's true that many people know me as a Special Rapporteur of the United Nations, and so I do, and I'm known for my reports, for my strong stance, but always grounded on international law. We can debate about how international law is interpreted, but international law is pretty clear when it comes to the illegality of the occupation, to the fact that apartheid is a crime and genocide should be prevented. And so I wanted to go beyond what I write in my reports, that in any case, even if my reports are helpful to understand the reality and how to fix it, they're still reducing Palestinians to numbers and statistics. And I wanted that the Palestine I've known could reach my readership in a very, very normal, ordinary, and humane way, which is the reason why I wrote this book.
And I mean, you said you had that. You were talking about the need that prompted you, that you wanted people to be able to understand what's happening. Is this part of does this fall into the journey of when the idea for the book first came to you? And if so, is there a particular moment or an incident that happened that sort of made you think, I really need to write about this?
It's been in the pipeline for a long time, because when I moved into this position, then in 2022, then after a while, there was someone who approached me, a book publisher, and said, look, I think that I hear you speaking, and it's so powerful how humane it sounds, and when you mix your own experience, your own memories, why don't you write a book about that? And this is so it's in May 2023 that I started thinking of writing a book, which was more personal in the sense, and more I see, I write, I tell you this, rather than this is what international law says. But then I had already started writing something in 2023 when the genocide started, and then I wrote a book that it's in Italian that is titled J'accuse, but it's really a glossary and a sort of a compass not to lose a sense of where you are, trying to help people understand what apartheid, genocide, occupation is. And then by late 2023, I had this eagerness to write those stories. And when another publisher approached me with an idea, to another publishing idea, I said, look, I would like to write this. And so this book came through, and it's been really a relief, because I wrote it in parallel with the report Economy of Occupation, Economy of Genocide. It was rather, this book was a collection of memories coming through what I read about occupation, apartheid, and the daily indignation and humiliations that the Palestinians endure. And so it gave me a bit of a respite.
And how did you navigate writing this book? I know you said you wrote it started writing in May 2023. This was before the genocide in Gaza started. But when the genocide obviously did start reaching media headlines around the world, and obviously you're still working on the book, how did you navigate your emotions around writing that book? And did the direction of the book change because of what happened in October 2023 and then everything that happened after?
Yeah, as I said, the book that I had in mind in 2022 had a halt because of the genocide. So as I was writing, I had to stop and write something else, something that was not meant to be an instant book, but a piece of reference to, because the language used, not just by Israel, but by legacy media, amplifying what Israel was saying, platforming Israeli leaders and soldiers much more than Palestinians, and always questioning Palestinian survivors, as if they had to undergo an interrogation and proving themselves innocent beyond any suspicion of guilt. This is when the first idea transformed into something that is still very much in line with my reports. This is technically what apartheid constitutes. This is self-defense. This is I was giving like some direction for people not to lose themselves in the Hasbara, amplified powerfully by Western media in particular. Then I really felt that it was time to articulate these lives. Like I used the people I describe almost as Virgils in the divine comedies, Dante's Divides comedy. So each of them is taking us through a circle of the hell that Palestinian life is under Israeli military rule. And but then there is also beauty. There is so much beauty that comes through, and the memories and my own memories of Palestine. So it's not, I mean, it's personal in a way that it's really my eye through my years in Palestine and working on and around Palestine.
I know you spoke about beauty and looking through joy of Palestine and Palestinians, but because I'd imagine that out of your book is centered around 10 stories, 10 characters that look at resilience and humanity, but also all the wounds that they have to sort of live with as per the subtitle of your book. So how did you navigate trying to write about Palestinian lives and Palestinian pain without turning them into symbols of victimhood or worse yet, trauma porn?
Because they're not this for me, and I think this is really what happens to many who are not Palestinians and put themselves in the seat of the observer. I hope I don't take too much from the stories I bring to the fore. I try as much as possible to limit my perspective to what I'm due to observe through my legal lens. But then again, the centrality of the Palestinian story means that the agency remains with the Palestinians. So no, I don't think they are portrayed as victims. They are victimized. They are mistreated. They are humiliated. They are neglected. But they still have so much energy, so much stamina, so much sumud, which is something that I intuited already when I wrote When the World Sleeps. But then it's only in a subsequent book that I recently wrote and it came out but just in Italian. So probably next year it will be in English. I mean, I reflect on what the awakening has been, because there has been an awakening, and I say, well, the awakening is not enough if there is no action and not will change. This is the thing. So it's been, when I wrote When the World Sleeps, still there was so much hope, which doesn't mean that now there is no hope. But 3 years into this, I say, if we're not able to really make sacrifices and see how to stop it altogether, it tells a lot, not just about our policymakers, but also about us. And now, when I say us, there is many layers. There are those who are, who have to work 3 jobs to make ends meet. And there are others who are really in privileged positions, like scholars, academic professors, people with tenure or established journalists or other professionals. And then they just carry on. They just don't take the risk. I do not expect that workers or students always stay at the forefront, but we need to understand how brutal it is. And it risks to be much worse of what has preceded because of how the world is organized, how the economy, how the politics are organized. And instead of sacrifices a little bit of ourselves in order to make not just Palestine, but our life, our collective space more equal, more free for everyone, we keep on indulging in our selfishness.
So your book starts with the story of Hind Rajab, the little girl in Gaza whom Israel murdered brutally as she waited for hours, terrified and alone in a family car for help to arrive with the ambulances. I mean, for me as a Palestinian, when I think of Hind, I think of my youngest niece when she was her age. She looks remarkably very similar to her in looks, so it does get to me a bit. But I also think of all the other hundreds of thousands of Palestinian children whose stories don't get the same, never had the chance to get the same amount of spotlight that Hind has. But I wanted to ask you, why did you start with the story of Hind and Palestinian children?
Look, when I wrote about that, it was not that well known yet. It was before the movie. It was one story, one awful, poignant story among many. I mean, I remember hundreds of them. I may not recollect all the bio data, sometimes I remember the name, sometimes I remember the age, but there are hundreds and hundreds of stories I've read of kids who have had their life in a miserable way during this genocide, kids whose body could not be recollected because of the explosion, or sometimes their body could be recollected hanging on the wall, like a coat at the end of the day, or kids who have died out of starvation, kids who have been who were left dying, bleeding after being attacked by dogs incited by the Israeli soldiers, and still forgiving the dog before dying. There is so much. There is so much. So I thought that, yeah, I had Hind as the main character for this chapter because she was from Gaza, and I thought that the kids in Gaza had to receive greater attention and greater recognition. Remember, this book was originally written in spring 2025. And so this was even before the massive assault against the West Bank in the context of the genocide started. So there were already many crimes. So it seemed to be very emblematic of what Israel does, also so well documented, so clear. Now we also know the names of the young Israelis who killed Hind. One is American. You see, I mean, and there is no repent, no regret, because these people keep on fighting, keep on going ahead with their life. They've not shown any resentment for what they've done.
Yeah, it completely baffles me how people seem to have no guilt or any sense of humanity towards children, regardless of where they're from.
Maybe they do, but they hide it in a sense, because I've heard also tons of testimonies from soldiers who, I mean, these are 18 and 19-year-old indoctrinated people turned into willful executioners or a genocide. So clearly they are traumatized. But the point is, it's also very heavy duty to heal in a society that continues to celebrate the genocide, that continue to dehumanize the Palestinians, that in fact punishes the Israeli Jews, show sympathy toward the Palestinians. This is the situation.
And another one of your chapters centers around Ingrid Gassner, a long-time expert on Palestine and also one of the co-founders of the BDS movement. You make it clear in that chapter that she didn't really seek out to be the center of attention in her work of Palestinian advocacy. And I thought it was a really nice tribute to Ingrid as well. But from what do you think activists today can learn from Ingrid in when it comes to advocacy for Palestine and Palestine solidarity?
Look, the first thing is that I don't think many people knew Ingrid.
I didn't, to be honest. It was very enlightening for me. So.
Yeah, many, and at the same time, Ingrid has been someone who's been behind the creation of some of the most important mechanisms for Palestine, for justice, for historical justice, like Badil. Badil is a lighthouse when it comes to refugee studies. Whatever happens to Badil, because it's been attacked as well, it's been defunded, Badil has produced it has ignited a level of consciousness and scrutiny and over the need to understand Palestine in an interconnected way, not to forget the millions of Palestinians around the world. Ingrid is also behind the BDS. No one knew because she didn't want to be seen. I mean, because she felt like I understand, like me, my situation is different because I have a public voice. My role is to be a public voice. Sometimes I resent it because I would like the light not to be on me, but to be on what I talk about. But Ingrid, it was only post-mortem that it was said that Ingrid was one of the co-founders of the boycott, divest, and sanction movement, together with Omar Barghouti and others. And Ingrid was also the one who really pushed for the understanding of the apartheid framework in Palestine. I remember the first time I heard her, I was surprised, but because I said, I tended to dismiss it because it didn't seem it made sense to me. She was right. It was apartheid. So she's been always very forward-looking, always visionary, very strong legal skills without being a lawyer herself, an incredible human. And she was also, the last thing she did that was remarkably visionary was help set up the European Legal Support Center, which is again a lighthouse for human rights defenders punished for their work on Palestine.
Yeah, they do incredible work in mainland Europe, especially in recent events happening in Germany and France and stuff. So yeah.
And also, if I can add another word about Ingrid, I mean, despite the fact that she lived in Palestine most of her life, she married a Palestinian. She gave birth to Palestinian children. She spoke Arabic like a Palestinian. She never put themselves at the center of the story. She was so, and why I'm saying that, because people from my part of the world, we tend to always want to be the protagonist, the main character, and it's all about us. And I think that Ingrid is such a model of humanity, because today it's about working together, almost being anonymous, almost. And I know that it sounds uncharacteristic coming from me, but again, I have a special role, and the moment I'm out of it, you will not. I mean, you will see me continuing to work for justice and against apartheid in Palestine and everywhere else, because this has marked me so deeply, as it was not like that before. But at the same time, it's not so. We need to learn not to take the spotlight especially from the Palestinians, who are so well educated and so able to speak for themselves rather than having us speaking on their behalf. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you got another chapter based around Dr. Ghassan Abu Sitta, and it was a very short chapter. And I just wonder, like, would that have chapter been a lot longer had the book been published this time of the year, in light of what's happening with Dr. Hussam Abu Safia? He's been in detention, arbitrary detention, administrative detention, whatever the term they use, the unlawful detention with no charge. And just recently he put a warning out to his lawyer saying that he might not survive. It's ringing a lot of alarm bells. And I wonder, how would that chapter have taken a different direction with in that context?
Yeah, it would, because medicide is part and parcel of this genocide. And what I've seen in the past year after I published the book, which was the version in English, is complemented by an additional explanation, like an introduction that I wrote for the English version, explaining, especially to a readership in the US or in the UK, strong allies, government-wise, of Israel, what it means to be punished for, just for speaking out and for doing what the UN has requested me to do, I would have devoted much more to how Israel has targeted hospitals, has targeted doctors, but also I would have enlightened the story with what it means to be tortured and to survive torture, because this has been over the past year, this has been the defining feature for me of this genocide, beyond the destruction in Gaza, which is overwhelming, but what has been done to the body, soul, intimacy, to the reproduction capacity of the Palestinians is the essence of this genocide.
I just wanted to get back to the introduction. I think you mentioned it in the preface or the introduction itself. I'm not sure which, but I thought it was really interesting. You talked about the rehumanization of Israelis, and how you think that's an important part of the whole process for liberating Palestine. I thought it was really interesting because I think it was a very valid point, but I was wondering if you were able to elaborate more on that. Like, what do you mean by the rehumanization of Israelis, and why do you think that's important as part of the process for the liberation of Palestine?
I think that it's important for those who do not know Israel to also get familiar with the story of Israel, and not to justify, but if one among many books that exist on the topic. There is an amazing one that I discovered recently by Pankaj Mishra. It's The World After Gaza. And it's interesting because this is not what the title is about. It's also this, but halfway through the book, it takes you through how the Holocaust and the victims of the Holocaust have been manipulated, instrumentalized, mistreated, including by Israel. And so I understand for many Jewish people, they have this vision of Israel as their safe place ever, because they continue to receive this message that the world is there to harm them. And they've suffered so much, not just during the Holocaust, but in the years to the Holocaust, in the centuries before the Holocaust, that somewhat is built into the DNA of the Jewish people. So I'd say, this fear of being exterminated is not just paranoia. Now, the thing is that on October 7, Israelis did see that paranoia confirmed. It was not paranoia. I mean, it was real. It was real. I mean, there was a carnage made, and this is not something that can be denied or should be undermined. It doesn't mean, again, defending the right of Palestinians to resist doesn't mean recognizing the right to commit massacres. And this is something that the Palestinians themselves say. So I think that there is a need to recognize the trauma and the pain of the other. Now, the fact that Israelis have been living in the trauma of the October 7 for every day since October 7, this is something else to be studied. But there is also another part of it that I say, I mean, in a way, there are Israelis that are against the apartheid, Israelis who are against the genocide, and there are many in the solidarity movement, and I've heard them, and I've met them saying, well, they should leave. Where are they supposed to go? I mean, they've been living there for 3, 4, 5 generations. And again, this is one thing is to make right what was wrong, create space, make justice, reconcile the present with the past, and allow the refugees to return and live in peace with one another. But another thing is to think that you can correct violence by committing violence, because by then you will procrastinate the problem. You will maintain the problem alive and alimент this vicious circle. And then there is something else. This is the last part of it. I do believe that I've said it from the very beginning of my mandate. You cannot, about the Israelis, especially Israeli soldiers, young soldiers, you cannot brutalize another person, another human being, another life without losing your humanity in return. And this is what's happening to the Israelis. They're losing their soul, even if they've always had half of it completely shut down to the Palestinians. What they are doing today, what they are justifying, what they are allowing, what they are standing behind is really immoral. It's not only criminal, it's immoral. And because it's immoral, it's collective and it touches everyone. This is why today it's important to say, if you are not against, somewhat you are part of it. You are part of the problem. And this is why I think that, as Edward Said used to say, a rehumanizing discourse that allows to see the other as equal, as our brother, as our sister, it's something that unites us, and it's a huge effort. But the moment you see this as possible, you cannot unsee it anymore. And this is what I talk about in the book.
Thank you for explaining. What do you hope people will learn or take away from the book after they finish reading your book?
I hope they understand that they have power, that there is a new sense of power that is to be internalized, and it's a very different than the alpha male dominated power that we have. It's not about achieving, it's not about conquering, it's not about dominating, but it's about preserving and sharing. So a more feminine version of power, which doesn't mean that it only belongs to women, of course. And also there is, everyone can contribute to it. Like genocide is a collective endeavor, so is the end of a genocide. And the genocide will end when enough people will care and will be able to make sacrifices in order to stop it. And perseverance is the word. I see people going to protest or people starting to boycott here and there and saying, oh, it's never enough, what's for? Hey guys, you don't stop until the genocide is over. If you start with the mentality that it works like a remote control, that you push a button and then the genocide stops, where you're doomed to fail. So this is what humanity implies: sacrifice and perseverance.
Look, thank you so much for your time, Francesca. I really do appreciate it, and for this engaging discussion as well.
Thank you so much, Elias. All the best.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.